Hello, everyone. I'm James Palcic from Science Safety. Today, we're here to discuss safer strategies for starting a new school year in your science department. And this, of course, is part of our monthly professional safety education webinar series. And Dr. Ken is going to facilitate the majority of tonight's discussion. I will be here to introduce Ken and then bring questions forward from the audience. And we'll have a recap at the end and then a live question and answer, or feel free to ask questions all throughout. And if you want to do them anonymously and just send them over to me as the host, that's fine. I'll ask Ken and we will get everything answered for you. Ken, let's start this. Let's start the show. How's that sound?
Ready.
All right. Well, as I discussed, Dr. Ken and I are both here. We are both well-known academic and practical safety educators, very well recognized in the areas of science and STEAM. We are exceptionally knowledgeable about legal safety standards and better professional safety practices. Correct, Ken?
Got it.
And we are here to help you meet those compliance and professional objectives. Now, after returning from the summer holidays, we know that having a safer reopening is not always possible. So we have some strategies, even now that we're a few weeks into or a month into the new school year. And we want to instill those and impart those over to you. So with that, Ken, I'm going to introduce you with some of your background and credentials. And this, folks, is just the tip of the iceberg, if you will. So Dr. Kenneth Roy, he is the Director of Environmental Health and Safety. He's also the Chemical Hygiene Officer, or CHO. He's the Designated Asbestos Compliance Coordinator, the PCB Program Coordinator, the Silica Compliance Coordinator, all of this for Glastonbury Public Schools in Connecticut. In addition to those duties, Ken is also the Chief Safety Compliance Advisor and Chief Safety Blogger for the NSTA, the National Science Teaching Association, as well as the Safety Compliance Officer for NSELA, the National Science Education Leadership Association. And in his spare time, of which there is very little, he has authored 13 science and STEM safety books and over 850 safety articles in professional journals and associations, including multiples that you see there on the screen and many more. I'm James. I'm the Chief Executive Officer here at Science Safety. I'm also a show host on Ed Circuit on the Safer Ed program. I'm a former GM as well as Director of Education, Safety, and Compliance over at Flynn Scientific. And I have only authored 3 science and STEM lab books for the Council of State Science Supervisors and multiple chemical hygiene plans for school districts. I am the safety reviewer for the Perimeter Institute for Theoretical Physics. It's a renowned global think tank located in Waterloo, Canada. And I've participated in well over 100 podcasts and written articles on science education, safety, and better professional practices all across science, STEM, and CTE, many of which you can find on edcircuit.com. Okay, all of that stuff is great. Let's get into it. I'm going to start this off with this one slide before I give it to Ken. And this is one thing I want everybody to just really get. Safety is a verb. And I mean that because it's an action word. It's not something that you just think about. It's something that you actually have to do. And there are so many aspects to safety and having a reliable risk management or safety program, but especially right now when you're reopening your school science departments, the first 2 months are always critical. And everything that we are going to discuss tonight is all about legal safety standards and accepted better professional safety practices. Now, we're going to explore all of these in a nice cohesive way. And Dr. Ken has been so generous in putting this presentation together for us. And I can't thank him enough. So with that, Ken, I'm going to turn on my digital avatar. I'm going to turn this over to you. Okay?
Got it. Thank you.
Excellent. All right, let's start with number 1. There we go.
First of all, I want to welcome everyone for spending part of their evening with us for this really important type of information that hopefully you can take and use when you get back to your local school districts. I just want to start out, you'll notice in the earlier slide that James mentioned the word safer. I really want to point something out about that. Please understand, you cannot make it safe. You can only make it safer. Again, let me reiterate that. You cannot make it safe. All right. Accidents can still happen no matter what, but you can make it safer. Again, hopefully reducing dramatically the amount of accidents, if not possibilities even of eliminating them. So when you're talking to students, when you're talking to parents, if you're talking to administrators, if you're talking to parents, again, anyone dealing with the school district, always talk about making it safer, not safe. Anyways, moving right along, safety qualification training under OSHA 29. Now, CFR stands for Code of Federal Regulations. 1910 is general industry. 1450 is the laboratory standard. Science educators are legally required to, under this standard of OSHA, have annual appropriate safety training. That means, yes, when you come back, initially you should be trained, right? Receive safety training upon initial hire, when you're first starting training. Receive safety training when working with new hazardous chemicals. I might also add here, in some instances, even biologicals. Receive safety training upon a new assignment. Let's say last year you taught biology, and oh, gee, we have an extra section of chemistry this year. The principal, can you teach that chemistry? Okay, that's a new assignment. You probably will need additional training. Very interesting statistic. 35% of teachers of STEM and CTE do not have any formalized safety training. Well, isn't that just great? Right? Can you believe it? Employers are required by legal safety standards to provide safety training. Doesn't matter if you're science, STEM, STEAM, CTE, technology education, whatever. All right? You're required to have that formal training. 35%. Unbelievable. Completing formalized safety training can reduce accidents by 51%. Notice if you provide the training, all right, you're going to reduce them at least by half, if not more. I don't get it. What don't people get about this? This is fantastic. This is a great statistic and should be shared with your administrators if they're not providing the training.
Ken, we had a question. We had a question come in about safety training, and I'm going to read it word for word. Does a 15-minute online video with 3 questions count as safety training? That's all we get in my school district. I know the answer. I just want to see you answer this one.
I would suspect not. Yeah, no, the OSHA training for the lab standard is very specific. All that you need to do is to go to just Google the OSHA laboratory standard. It comes up and it tells you exactly what are the components of the training that you are supposed to get. Take that and share it with your administrator. I don't know what planet they're on, but I don't believe in 15 minutes, and it sounds like a very general kind of safety training, not very specific to laboratory safety.
Agreed.
Initial safety assessment, departmental. Each of these safety criteria will need to be inspected and assessed prior to use. Ensure all educators are appropriately, here we go again, trained in safety and standard operating procedures in your school. Engineering control. What are engineering controls? Well, this is technology helping to make it safer for you in the work site. Examples, the ventilation system, emergency eye wash, vent showers, and there's many more. GFI are absolutely critical. Ground fault interrupt or protect electrical circuits. Now, technically, it's only supposed to be near water sources like a sink, period. But in a science lab or a STEM lab or a STEAM whatever, you might have a wave tank, a ripple tank. There's water. Aquariums, there's water. So my point is, there should be every electrical receptacle in your laboratory should be ground faulted. All right, GFI. Administrative protocols. chemical hygiene plan and or hazard communication safety plan, safety rules, etc. PPE, personal protective equipment, critical, absolutely critical, right? What are we talking about? We're talking about eye protection, and eye protection, it all depends what the hazards are. If they're physical hazards, maybe you're dealing with slinkies, all right, or just splashing some water around, or rockets or projectiles, in other words, you can use safety glasses with side shields, must have side shields, or indirectly vented chemical splash goggles. You can either one. For liquid hazards, generally biological and chemical, you must use indirectly vented chemical splash goggles. Safety glasses just don't cut it. They're just like my prescription glasses. It's all open all over the place. You get a splash, you're going to get it in the eye, which could be disastrous for you. Hand protection, right? Nitrile, vinyl gloves, no latex, please. Body protection, non-latex aprons or lab coats. Address any issue they discover and prohibit student activity until the issue is resolved of an abundance of safety and legal standards. Absolutely critical, right? You want to protect not only yourself as an employee, but also the students. You want to make sure that all of these things are in place and they're operational, all right? Don't do labs if your engineering controls, like you don't have any ventilation, all right? I don't care what the administrator says. You should not be doing that, because you know who's going to be it legally? The courts look to you as the one that's supposed to know. You oversee safety in the laboratory. Tangentially, it's the administration, but you're numero uno. So you better make sure that all these things are operational and up to par where they need to be.
Agreed. A question came in about that, Ken. Who is usually? I'm just going to read the question. Who is usually involved when you do a safety inspection in the science department? That's a great question.
Well, first of all, that is a requirement of the responsibility of the chemical hygiene officer, which I hope you have, which is again required by the legal safety standard, the lab standard, right? You should have an administrator there, either chief building administrator or one of the assistants. In some instances, if this has been an ongoing issue, I would even say you should have a union rep there. You need to have someone else there that's going to hear everything that goes on and what doesn't go on. Not that I don't trust administrators, I'm one myself, but sometimes the administrators don't see what they need to see, right? So hopefully.
And the department chair as well from the science department?
Absolutely. Well, that's the supervisor, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Very good. Thanks for clarifying, sir. Okay, here's a great question. One grade has more accidents. Ken, you and I know the answer to this one. So if you think about kindergarten through grade 12, one grade level actually has a statistically much higher percentage of accidents. Now just consider this. Is it an elementary, a middle, or a high school grade? And now ask yourself, why do you believe that this is the case, right? Why do you believe that there's a difference in potential hazards and resulting risks in one grade more than others? And when you know the answer, will you do anything differently? Well, Ken, let's see. I should have put a poll in here, but we're just going to put it out there. 70% of those science accidents occur in grade 9. That's
70%. That's
yeah,
huge.
that's remarkable.
All right, that is statistically significant, obviously.
Oh, very
Not to
much
talk
so.
statistics, but very much so. And you know, the question that you posed, why? I mean, what happens to kids when they go from 8th to 9th grade? Part of the problem is the sophistication of the laboratory design. I know a number of middle schools that do not have formal laboratories, right? They work in general classrooms. They have some equipment and stuff, but nothing formal as you would in a 9-12 kind of a situation of a high school. So some of that is new to them. Developmentally, all right, kids that they're with in middle school is a lot different than kids that they're in at high school, okay? Also, the kinds of hardcore science that they would be experiencing in ninth grade, much different, much more responsibility for that student in the lab activities and the like. So you can see there's a lot of factors here that would raise that up to that significant figure there of 70%.
Right, because that you're absolutely correct. That is the grade where they are exposed to equipment, apparatus, chemicals,
Yep.
all types of inherent hazards in a formalized laboratory that didn't exist before.
Yep.
And then to add another dimension to this great question, knowing the answer, what are you going to do to be part of a preventable statistic? Most new teachers in a high school are assigned grade 9 and 10 general science.
Another big problem.
And they have minimal experience in classroom management and everything else. And I'm not saying this, negatively, but these are the classes that need the most amount of supervision, the most amount of experience. So if you are a department chair, if you're a science supervisor, really work with your teams on making sure that they are mentored properly, especially those teachers in grade 9 and 10.
Absolutely critical.
Fantastic. Oh, look at this.
Okay, chemical hygiene plan. I don't know, it's a little eerie looking at that skull and crossbones. But anyways, ensure that all members of the science department, now, I'm talking generically. When I say science, we're also talking about STEM, STEAM, most certainly, so be aware of that. Have access to a current chemical hygiene plan. Current. That's not one that was done 10 years ago. Current means the one that should have been done probably over the summer by the chemical hygiene officer. All right? Not one even 2, 3 years old is too old. Things change. Things change. Which contains necessary standard operating procedures or SOPs for reasonable having chemical management in the school. This is for the science department and managed by your designated CHO, the chemical hygiene officer. Other departments will use a HAZCOM. Now this is interesting. Science teachers used to be under the HAZCOM, the right. We used to call it the right to know until OSHA figured out you might know it but not understand it. So now they call it the right to understand. But anyways, but it wasn't until 1991 that the lab standard came in because OSHA figured out, oh, wait a minute, science labs, they definitely have more hazards and risks than a math class or a language arts class or whatever. So maybe we need to do a little more. Well, that's when the lab standard was born. Okay. So this is why we're saying other departments. Now, even tech and engineering and art, even though they're hazards, there's not as many chemical hazards as you have in science labs. So they're under the hazard communication plan. Again, as noted here in some of the examples. For information, a chemical hygiene plan needs to be reviewed at least annually. I'm repeating myself. Science Safety can review your existing CHP and make recommendations based on our risk management matrix. Absolutely. Take a look at it. It's really good. Equipment assessment. Most of the equipment using instruction. Okay, now, notice we don't say labs here. We're talking about instructional spaces. The reason being, all right, labs, certainly, they have equipment, but I've seen many of the science classrooms that they have demonstrations and sometimes even hands-on activities. So they're all considered instructional spaces. They need repair or replacement. If a piece of equipment is not working order, do not use it. Do not use it. Beaker, goggles, GFI, machine guards, etc. I was doing a mock OSHA inspection one year in a chemistry lab, and it was a regular classroom, a lab, and the class was going on, and this male student comes up to the teacher, he said, geez, he said, on my goggles, this port here, it popped out, and I don't know where it went. Can I get another pair? And the teacher, to my surprise, said, oh, Johnny, don't worry about it. Just go back and finish this. I'll find a new one for you at the end of the period. What? No. I could have strangled her. Seriously, I'm like, come on. Are you kidding me? Do you realize the risk involved here? If there's a splash and it goes through that port, and the kid can be blinded. And by the way, I'm a witness. Anyways, if you take care of it immediately, immediate replacement, all right? If an activity is performed with faulty equipment, including engineering controls, and an accident and injury occurs, the teacher and administration have joint liability. This can be legally and financially held responsible. Again, if a reasonable and prudent person would not conduct the activity because of the equipment, neither should the teacher. That's why it's in bold. It's as simple as that. Chemical inventory. Oh, this is another one I love for dates. Ensure that there's an accurate chemical inventory. When maintaining inventory, any chemicals that have exceeded their shelf life. Some chemicals have shelf life. Others can keep to the beginning of time, but there are many, they decay, not good. All right, so you got to be very careful. And some are very short. Okay, must be disposed of, and I must say appropriately, as it states here. Disposal procedures found the SDS for what particular chemical you're dealing with. There should be an SDS for every chemical. OSHA requires for every chemical in the inventory on site, and these need to be kept for 30 years. Yes. So remember, in about 2016, we switched over from MSDS to SDS. You need to still keep those MSDSs for a total of 30 years, believe it or not. And there's legal reasons for that. Any chemicals that have been broken lids or damaged vessels, bottles, must be dealt with immediately. Any liquid spilled can be contained and handled in accordance with, that must be shortcut for with, the chemical hygiene plan. We need a little extra space there. Anybody, what's an SDS? SDS is a safety data sheet. It replaces MSDS, material safety data sheet. Ensure that all accumulated chemical wastes have been labeled and are scheduled for hazardous waste pickup, which usually ends up at the end of the year, unless it's a more immediate type of situation. It's extremely dangerous. You need to get it out of there right away.
Another question came in, Ken. What if we have chemicals from before GHS, which is every lab? Do these need a current SDS? I know the answer. Do they need to have updated labels too? I know the answer.
Actually, believe it or not, and I know this directly from OSHA, those are grandfathered.
Yes. However, as a better professional safety practice.
Oh, I agree. I'm just telling you.
You and I would agree, yes.
Legally, you may just keep the MSDS for those original older chemicals. The better professional safety practice, on the other hand, says, you know what? You should update it. Now, the only problem with that, all right, MSDSs and SDSs, the contents change potentially over time. You make a newer SDS that really isn't telling the true story about the original chemicals MSDS. So just be aware of that. Okay.
They asked a follow-up. How long should chemicals be in the school inventory? 1 year? 5 years?
Well, technically, it all depends on I'll be honest with you, it does depend on the chemical and what the life cycle is for that chemical. In general, should not be more than 2 to 3 years, to be very honest with you. That's the most I would try to keep them. Now, there are others certainly that you could keep for decades, all right? Because they don't evolve into other kinds of dangerous products. So you got
right, and those would be your mostly inert substances, salt.
Correct. Yeah, but I'm just saying, you don't. It's just not carte blanche. You just don't do everything.
Correct.
Right. Ensure that,
but they should have a fresh supply, and quite honestly, we're in 2023. GHS went into place in 2015. Having chemicals that are 8 years old and beyond should not happen, because it wouldn't happen in industry.
Oh, maybe. Ensure that all accumulated chemical waste have been labeled and are scheduled for hazardous waste cleanup.
I agree. Next. Okay.
Oh, you agree. Thank you. Engineering controls. Okay, we talked a little bit about this, but this is a much more spectral. These safety control measures have been built in as infrastructure. Hopefully. I've seen sometimes the architects don't know one part of their body to the other, And you want to make sure, if you can, hopefully you're part of renovations or new structures that are built, the laboratories, that the architect knows exactly what they're doing. A number I've dealt with do not. I hate to say that. In one or two instances, I had to call on OSHA and to straighten them out. I had one that said, "Oh yeah, you don't need to have just fresh ventilation all the time. You can recycle it to other parts of the building. I mean, we have an energy issue, so we want to save on energy and this and that." Excuse me, what planet are you on? This is the architect, and he got straightened out real quick when I contacted OSHA. Anyways, so UV goggle sanitizer, okay. Oh, and by the way, goggle sanitizer, that UV bulb, check it every year. And there's a little peephole usually on the side where you can do that. They burn out eventually. And you put goggles in there and you think they're being sanitized, all right? They're just seeing darkness, nothing else, all right? They're not getting any radiation from that UV bulb. So always check that annually. Fire extinguisher, ABC, and if you have combustible metals, you want to type D, like sodium, potassium, lithium, etc. Fire blanket, mass. Oh, another shortcut, matter.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
Who did this? Anyway, matter control, gas shut-off switch, water, electrical. Eye wash station. Now, I'm not talking like a little bottle that you're hanging up. Forget it. All right. It's not continuous flow. It's very limited. I can guarantee it's probably been sitting there for 10 years and it probably has real nice microbe growth. All right. You want it plumbed, all right, directly into your water supply. Drench type safety shower, ground fault, circuit interval. We already talked about that. Same thing as a GFI. Machine guards. All right. These are more in STEM labs for your power tools, miter saws, drill brothers, et cetera, table saws. Machine guards to shield the worker, also with obviously 3D printer, machinery, equipment, and tools and the like. Appropriate continuous and non-recycled ventilation. Yes, continuous, non-recycled. It doesn't go anywhere else. It comes in your lab and it goes out. That's it. And the fire code said it must be continuous. It wasn't always that way, but it has been now for a number of years. Must be ongoing, continuous flow. So you're constantly getting fresh air. Well, why is that? Because the laboratory may have flammable vapors. It can have toxins, particulates that are no good, all sorts of stuff. So anyway, so this is, again, a nice thumbnail sketch of all the engineering controls that you need to have. It's required. This is not a maybe or a suggestion. This is a must be. Appropriate PPE for all occupants. All occupants. Okay? All occupants. If they're in the lab or CLAB, the mixed classroom laboratory, if you're doing something that contains hazards, all right, and risk, either biological, physical, chemical, everyone must have on appropriate PPE. All right. I laugh. I went into one place, one school in the lab, and I noticed they have called a safe table in the back of the lab. And I said, teacher, what's a safe table? Oh, well, that's where, if they get tired of wearing their PPE or if they want to have a quick snack, they can go to the safe table. I said, in a chem lab? You call that safe? I don't think so. No way. All right. The stuff you run into. I mean, and she was just, I thought it was the best thing going. All right. Should appropriately sized PPE. If you have this going on at the elementary, you don't give them high school size PPE glasses or goggles, whatever. Make sure it's the right size. For all occupants, science instructional space and CTE instructional space. Not all people wear the same size t-shirt. Very true. This includes the indirectly vented comfortable splash goggles meeting the ANSI ICA Z87.1 D3. Just look on the side of the goggle or the glasses, and there's reference to that. Please don't go to the dollar store and get them. Well, now it's $1.25. The $1.25 store, because you won't find that on them. All right. You need to have that. All right. Because if you don't, especially the D3, that's for impact. if something hits it, you don't want it shattering and blinding the person. Okay. Goggles or safety glasses with side shields can be used when working with physical hazards, which I've already noted. All right, most of your power tools, hand tools, springs, glassware, etc. Nitrile gloves and non-latex lab aprons or laboratory coat appropriate for the material shall be worn when using chemicals, biological, heated items, certain tools, etc. For specific hazardous chemical PPE requirements, consult the safety data sheet, section 8. Section 8. Okay, for appropriate PPE. It tells you right in there. That's the first thing you should do, right? Before you actually have kids do the hands-on experience. Know what the PPE requirements are. Face shields along with safety goggles, never in place of safety goggles, should be worn preparing or transferring corrosive materials and where there is possibility of a chemical splash. Oh, one of my favorite topics, right? HVAC. HVAC. Ventilation system requires suitable filters in place for appropriate air exchange. This is a filtration system. Assuming that the appropriate filters are in place, they must be inspected by a trained heating and ventilation tech and replaced regularly, 4 or 5 times a year, not once every 5 years. For optimal, you should see some of these some of the schools I go into. I can take a knife and scrape off the crap that's on that filter. You think that's filtering anything? It's doing nothing, right? Consult local and state guidelines and legal safety stands for additional information and guidance. Remember, under the NFPA, National Fire Protection Association, the HVAC units, instructional spaces, storage rooms involving hazards, blah, 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 are to run ongoing and are not to be recycled anywhere else in the building. Good. Oh,
Yeah.
by the way, one other thing. Most laboratories have windows, right? Now let's think about this. It's spring. You got a lot of pollen in the air. It's more than, we're talking biologicals here. What do I see? I see teachers opening up windows, right? The operation of that HVAC system is in peril if you do that, right? Because it's not doing the job it is supposed to do in that closed area. You open that window, you're bringing in the pollen and the light. In other words, it's not being filtered. The whole idea of your filtration system is to filter. You open the windows, that's not filtering anything. All right, so please keep the windows shut. Okay.
Got it.
Safety signage. Appropriate signs must be posted in the instructional spaces where potential biological, chemical, physical hazards exist. Signage includes, but is not limited to, eye wash, for showers, extinguishers, spill kits, master electrical, gas shutoffs, fire evacuation, escape routes, and there's more. But those are the heavy hitters in that. NFPA 704 Diamond, that 4 diamond thing, commonly referred to as the NFPA Hazard Diamond, provides a system of identifying the specific hazards of a material and the severity of the hazard that would occur during an emergency response. Any instructional space and/or support areas. Okay, what's a support area? Well, that is the chemical storage area, the prep room, et cetera, containing chemical hazards needs to have NFPA 401 warning placards on the door. That's the fire code requires that. It must be on the outside of the door. So if there's a fire, something, the firefighters know the dangers that they're going to be getting into. General housekeeping. Now, I hate to say this, but we all know, and there's a reason for this, that many of your colleagues, I'm sure none of you are, many of your colleagues are hoarders. Right? I see this all the time in labs. Well, why is that? Part of it is because of the lack of stability in the financial system. Each year you have to pray that you're going to get money allocated. Many times you don't, all right? It's frozen or they can't give you it all because they need it for the soccer field or something. I don't know, I'm only kidding, but it's true. These things happen, all right? So teachers, when they get everything they want, they buy everything they can and because they're going to save it for a rainy day. Well, they keep saving it and saving it and saving it. And they also like to get things from industry, from parents, and let me donate this to you. Please, please don't accept donations. You don't know what you're getting into. Believe me when I tell you this. And then your school district will have to pay to get rid of it, right? Employees are expected to actively engage in prudent instructional space housekeeping practices. This means keeping it neat, tidy, and organized, not Hoarderville. In addition to chemical and biological hazards, physical hazards such as trip, slip, fall, and electrical equipment are also eliminated, and the spaces should be neat and orderly to prevent accidents. As always, make sure there's safety items such as the fire extinguisher, eye wash station, drench shower, fume hood, and no obstructions for quick access. Right? I'm shocked the things that I find in front of eye wash stations, especially. I had a physics teacher who stored these rods for ring stands. Right? He's got the whole ring stand in the rod. And where does he store them? He stores them around the eye wash station. What? Oh, sure. You got a splash in your eye and you're going there and you're putting your head down because you think you're over the eye wash. You're not exactly over that. Does the word impalement bring a picture to your mind? Not good. All right. So please make sure things are neat and tidy. A tidy, labeled, and organized laboratory is a safer space.
Exactly.
Students with additional needs. Teachers need to remember that there is a difference. This is really good too. Difference between making accommodations, all right, making reasonable accommodations, I might add, for students, or modifying an assignment assessment for students. According to NSTA, accommodations are changes made to the lab environment. To the lab environment, to the available lab equipment. For a stool, for example, all right, the size of the stool, size of the table, whatever, or in how the lab is being completed by a student. Modifying a lab would involve changing the content of the lab and therefore modifying your expectations of what student is required to complete.
There's a few other aspects to this, students with additional needs in the science lab. For example, if that student is in a wheelchair, you may have to do things lower, but have a spill catcher tray there so that if it spills, it doesn't roll off the bench right onto them. There's a lot of things. We did a whole session specifically about that. And if people are interested, they can register and download that one. But that was a great session we did from the ADA and IDEA. Great. Sorry, Ken, I jumped in there.
Did you?
I did.
Plants and animals. Having plants and animals in the science and STEM department are often beneficial and useful teaching and learning tools. However, there are some basic duties that are required to ensure that there are no allergies or sensitivities among your students or colleagues. You must ensure that these organisms are provided with proper care and will survive, including providing food, water, hygiene, specific needs of plants or animals in your lab. This includes fish in an aquarium, organisms in terrariums, habitats, cages, planters, and other environments used for educational purposes. Do not force any student to handle any specimen in your instructional space. Please, it must be voluntary, right? Now, in this situation, your first responsibility is to check with the school nurse, all right, to find out, and or the parent, to find out if there are issues, especially with allergies like asthma, okay, sensitivities, because there are some instances where, I'm sorry, but you're not going to be able to have these kinds of really fun things that kids love to see, learn from, and might not be able to have them because of those kinds of situations, right? So they got to be very careful with this. So always do your homework first. Make sure it's safe to have these things in there medically for the students. Okay. Identifying hazards. Identifying possible risks in science STEAM programs can often be achieved by combining appropriate safety training and awareness. Follow the proper procedure and safer operating procedures in the lab, as well as recognizing possible sources of hazards, possible accidents or injuries. Perform a hazard analysis, risk assessment, and take appropriate safety action prior. That means before, not during or after, any planned lab activity. And over here in the chart, the type of lab hazard, typical situation here that we're dealing with. You can see obviously chemical hazards, hazardous chemicals, toxins, corrosives, flammables, and the like. Biological hazards, microbes, plants, genetic materials, animals, et cetera, and physical hazards, slips, falls, projectiles, equipment, apparatus, machinery, noise. Oh, look, electrical shock, fire protection, and malfunction extension cords next.
For those of you wondering why Ken and I are laughing, it's because we argue all the time. I think electrical should be its own separate type of lab hazard. And Ken has books published that say, nope, it is a physical hazard. It's a subsection of physical.
That didn't take too long.
No, it didn't. But that's why. That's why. So here it is. I know what you're going to say.
Okay. AAA, driving home safety.
I love it.
All right. AAA method requires teachers to perform a potential hazard. There's your first day analysis. What are the hazards? Before operative term, each lab demonstration or lab activity as mandated by standard 45 and the NFPA, then conduct resulting health and safety risk assessment, second A, and then once you know what the risks are based on those hazards, you take the best possible safety action to make it safer, which might involve even elimination of that activity. In order to perform the three-step approach, understanding and evaluating safety hazards, you must follow these steps sequentially. Now, this is probably one of the most important slides here. Not that they're all not important, but hazard analysis, determine potential physical, chemical, biological hazards outlined in the SDS in tandem with the teacher experience, safety and the lab activity, use of chemical hygiene plan, trusted safety authorities. Okay. First thing, what are the hazards? Next, as a result of those hazards, what are the health and safety resulting risks? All right. Make use of the SDS sections. They're listed there that highlight information for safer handling, such as potential hazards, fire safety, accidental spill, stability, toxicological information, et cetera, et cetera. All right. Now, once you know this, obviously you should get a whole picture of exactly what you should be doing and what you should not allow to be done. And that's going to be the safety action. Determine appropriate safety action based on the types of safety hazards and resulting health and safety risks. The top 3 actions to consider based on OSHA hazard prevention and control include, number 1, make sure you have the appropriate engineering controls to address these issues. Number 2, make sure you are following all the administrative controls, protocols, etc. And believe it or not, the last thing is to make sure you have appropriate personal protective equipment. So that's the hierarchy that you need to look at for safety action. And again, sometimes the actual activity doesn't cut it because it's just unsafe. You can't make it safer. Go.
That's absolutely correct.
Thank
and
you.
the main piece that people want to ask themselves is, does the risk exceed the educational value or utility of doing that particular activity?
Absolutely.
That's it. And if it does, or if you even think maybe, it absolutely does. So don't do it. Do something else. Watch it online. Do something else. It's not worth it.
Yep. Okay, a big 6, hazards and risk actions. Review SDS for safety concerns, identify any possible risk areas, including health, handling, storage, flammability, toxicity, toxicology, and the pertinent items. Review all equipment, materials, apparatus, tools, and machinery involved with the planned activity. Review procedures and materials, concentration, timing, sequence, waste management, and emergency procedures. If you've not performed the activity before, very important bullet here. Test drive this experiment with a colleague and evaluate unexpected hazards, results, and risks. Don't test it on your students. Do it beforehand and make sure that you have all the appropriate personal protective equipment. I'm sorry.
Oh,
hey.
I'm sorry. I went back.
What'd you do, sneeze? Allow for substitutions of hazardous chemicals for less harmful ones while meeting curricular expectations. Ask if education, oh, here we go, right here. I knew it was there. Ask if the educational value of doing this activity outweighs the risks. Who said that? Oh, that was JP in the last slide. AAA approach will clearly identify the potential hazards and resulting health and safety risks, and the instructor must make a safer determination about all planned activities prior to conducting.
That's true.
Says it all.
All, and that is really how you do a hazard analysis and risk assessment. Those big six pieces right there will facilitate your life and still provide that hands-on experiential learning, that engagement that we want with your students.
It'll be safer for your students and you'll still have a job tomorrow.
All good points.
Yes. All right, using the safety checklist. Science Safety is pleased to provide you with safety checklist to use as your school science department is open again. This contains multiple safety criteria for each laboratory or science STEAM instructional area or space that you can use to ensure that you are providing a safer learning and teaching environment. The checklist will be emailed to you within 24 hours from the Science Safety. This is a big plus, seriously. And I'm so pleased that Science Safety is willing to do this for you because this is a critical piece of making sure that it's safer, again, not only for your kids, but for you and any other employees or volunteers in your lab. Critical questions. Okay, the critical questions. Critical questions are, do you have a current chemical hygiene plan? Now, again, current means one that was annually updated. Do you have a hazard communication standard? If appropriate. Now, you may have one for your STEM and STEAM, but again, that's not exactly appropriate for a science laboratory. A chemical hygiene plan is. But it doesn't mean some of that chemical hazard stuff, or the hazard communication does flow into the chemical hygiene plan. Are your science and STEAM teachers and administrators appropriately safety trained annually? Do your schools complete annual lab safety inspections? I hope so. Do your schools use student safety acknowledgement forms? Is there adequate and appropriate PPE, personal protective equipment, in each school? Do you have an accurate and current chemical and equipment inventory? Might add current, yes, up to date. Are you comfortable with the existing safety program in your school district, knowing you can be personally accountable? If you don't think it cuts it, if it doesn't cut the mustard, you need to take action and do something about it. All right? Look what it says. If you answer no to any of these questions, please contact Science Safety for assistance. But again, you also need to contact your administration, your chemical hygiene officer, and your supervisor. Because if something goes south and you knew there was something wrong, you're it. You don't want to be it legally, honest. You don't want to be it. So the other thing is always, you can go and talk to them. Always put it in writing. Critical. And if you do it through an email, make sure you send a copy to your own private email. Things disappear in school districts on email lists. I've seen this happen, believe it or not. So you want to make sure that you have saved a copy. And I don't mean in your desk, in your classroom or lab. Take it home.
Well, before we end this today, go to our open forum for questions and answers. I just want to let everybody know that Science Safety and Accelerate Learning have partnered together to provide access to our safety solutions and services across the entire K-12 educational marketplace in the USA. Now, Accelerate Learning is our exclusive distribution partner for our products, and together we are making schools safer through education and awareness. Please contact Accelerate Learning for more information or to schedule a conversation. Oh, Ken, another question has just popped up in there. I'm going to give you that as we move to there's some of the references that you use to create this. And then here's the questions for our presenters. Here we are. So Ken, it says, I am a science supervisor and I don't know where to begin with all of these safety requirements. is there a checklist for assessing any missing pieces in my school district? Yes.
Okay, you've already answered that. Yeah,
Yes.
we talked about the checklist.
Yes, there is. You can do a needs assessment online for free on our website. That's there as well. Uh, that is actually that's a huge question. There's no short answer to that one.
Right, right. But there are certainly references, and science safety certainly is a great resource for you because they have addressed it. They know what the needs are out there in the labs. All right. Myself and JP have worked on this. I'm still actively involved, as was noted, in the trenches in a school district, and I oversee 35 laboratories. And if you don't think that's a challenge, that's in addition to all the other safety for all the other employees in the school district. So I know what's out there, and I do a lot of consultant work, and I do mock OSHA inspections, et cetera, as does science safety. So we're in the trenches. We know what's going on and what your needs are. And trust me, this question comes out all the time. I can't believe all this. We don't do any of this stuff. What do I do first? All right. First of all, you recognize that there's a problem, and you
We
reach
got some.
out,
Yeah, you're 100% right.
and you reach out to others in your building or in your school district to get support to help you rectify all these things.
Yeah, exactly. Ken, I got to say, I love these questions coming in here. Here's a great one. How often should goggles be changed? Every year? Every 3 years?
I'm assuming that what we're saying here is not by the number of times that they are cleaned and sanitized.
I'm guessing it's replaced.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we're talking a replacement. Well, you know what? It all depends. I mean, you need to inspect those on a regular basis. And I would say, you know what? If you have a goggle sanitizer, when they're all in there, take a look. All right. If you have a band on the back and you see it's breaking in some places, ripped or torn, you've got fogginess, you've got all kinds of, chemical issues. Obviously, you put it on, you can't see 2 feet in front of you. Yeah, it's time. And that might be in a week of buying it. All right. I have seen other kinds of them. Honest, I'm serious. There's some good, if they're taken care of appropriately, inspected regularly. I've seen them a decade used, and they're still in good shape. So it all depends. Number one is the inspection. And number two is making sure that they are cleaned with soap and water first, right? Because you have to get rid of the physical and the chemical issues. Then you put in a goggle sanitizer to get rid of the biological issues. And if that's done on a regular basis and there's no injuries to them based on student activities and the like, then you should be good.
All right, here's a great question. Are the safety standards different if the teacher does the experiment in front of the students as a teacher demonstration rather than having the students do it?
Are the safety standards different? In other words, you shouldn't have to follow all the safety protocols? No. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the students are doing it or if the teacher is doing it. Everybody has to have on the PPE, got to have the appropriate engineering controls operational, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, certainly, you want to make sure also that there is a barrier if you're going to do an activity, especially if there's hazardous chemicals or biologicals. All right. So you need the screen in there to make sure, a safety screen to make sure that if things are splashed, doesn't hurt people out in the audience. And that means also that kids still have to have the appropriate PPE on if they're watching you. But now, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Everybody follows the same safety protocols, period.
Correct.
Thank you.
Gold star, Ken. You got that one. I got to tell you, I love this question. What is the I'm going to use this term generously. What is the right number of chemicals to have in a school inventory? We have more than 300 in our stock room. To me, that's way too many.
Well, it all depends on the curriculum. All right. In a high school, there are many high schools that in fact have advanced placement courses, have college preparatory types of courses, et cetera. It depends on the curriculum. And I have seen situations in which there are way more. Sometimes there's 500. Now, the point is, if your chemical storeroom cannot accommodate that, then you should not have all of those chemicals. And they need to change the kinds of activities that they're doing because the facility cannot accommodate it. All right, that is critical. But again,
Exactly.
as long as you have a large enough appropriate shelving, chemical storage area, et cetera, et cetera. And some school districts have several of these rooms, chemical storerooms and the like. So I can't give you a specific number. It all depends, number one, on your curriculum and also on your physical facility.
Very good. Well, Ken, that's the end of the questions, and we've come right up to the top of the hour. We're actually on time today. I can't believe it. We did it.
Wow.
First time. Practice makes perfect. It only took us 12 times to get here.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. Well, everyone, Ken, on behalf of the entire audience and everyone here at Science Safety, it's been an honor and a privilege to have you share some of your insights regarding safety standards and better professional safety practices with us, and some of those personal anecdotes about things that you have seen in your experiences. It is always incumbent upon all science educators, if they have any hesitation, any pause, I think that they should stop what they're doing and really ask themselves, again, that question, is the risk worth that reward? I know that there's curricular objectives that we're trying to meet, but if that activity, if that risk or some element of that activity has a much higher risk than the educational value, please don't do it. Please don't do that. Ken, do you have any final words for us tonight?
First of all, thank everyone again for hanging in there for this important information. And please go out and reap the benefits of this activity here. It's to help you, to make it safe for you and your kids. And don't be afraid of the administration, please. If things are not right, make sure they know it. And again, put it in writing. And please, whatever you do, be safer.
Stay safer. You got it. Good night, everyone. Thanks for attending.